Now, it's highly unlikely that I'm going to split any atoms open when I say that the podcast medium has evolved tremendously over the past 20 plus years. But it has, and it's pretty cool. What was once an audio file that was delivered to you via RSS and could be synced up with your iPod and listened to on the go, hence the name podcast, has become so much more. And it's taken on a number of different faces, definitions, platforms, approaches, you name it. Across the board, we've seen tremendous growth. And at the core of success in podcasting is an effective strategy. Knowing how to utilize all of these great benefits for your business is really going to tell the story of how podcasting impacts your efforts. If you try to do things blindly, more than likely you're going to hit the wall. But if you have an effective strategy drawn out, this allows you to understand what you're creating, who it's for, where you want to go on a long-term basis, and where you can make small changes along the way that could potentially impact everything. So today I want to take some time to apply an authentic definition to podcasting strategy and help you understand why it's so important to the way you utilize this medium in your business. Hello, my name is Jason Sircone, and you have found episode 102 of Podcasting Strategy Simplified. So my take on all of this is I love all of these amazing changes and movements forward with podcasting. And I know there are a handful of people out there that just don't want to let go of what that initial original definition of podcasting is. I know people will stir up shit on the internet, and that's usually their primary MO that in doing posts like hot take, podcasting will always just be audio. Why? That's like saying a car will always be what the Model T was back in the 1920s. It's come a long way since then. And dare I say, I guess in today's world, there'd be no use for a Model T. But at the same time, this is what evolution and technology brings to the table. It helps things move forward and it allows creators to be more creative. And it allows those of us that want to use these tools to our advantage to do so in a way that moves the needle in our business. If you go back in the archives here, since I rebranded the show, you've heard me talk several times about the fact that I rebranded the show. The reason being is I looked at my overall strategy that I had developed when I rebranded to Bombtrack Media. Let's Blow This Up was the former name of the show. That was a direct extension of that brand name, and the two complemented each other very well. But what Let's Blow This Up did not do was tell you what the show is about. When you're searching for information about podcasting strategy, podcast marketing, how to be a better podcaster, you see Podcasting Strategy Simplified, and that name tells you, okay, that's what I'm going to learn when I consume this content. But when you see Let's Blow This Up, you don't get that on the nose. You'd have to dig into it deeper, and in a lot of cases, many people are just scrolling on by to the next thing. And in understanding that, I knew I needed to make some pivots in my strategy, and I did just that. And making this name change has now set me off onto a better course that's going to allow me to create more effective content for you. So here we are. And that's why I feel having that strategy in place is something that you absolutely have to have on the front end. And it's the first step in everything because it gives you something to look back on. You can track your progress and you can say, yes, I am on the right course. This is exactly what I set out to do. Or maybe I need to make a few changes, and in doing that, it's going to get me where I want to be. That's what I did with rebranding the show. And what's funny is if you go back to episode 100, I had Mark Ronick and Rich Perry on, and I was talking about some of the changes that I'm making in my business as a whole. And I was evaluating the strategy and everything I had done up to that point. And I started thinking about what I do on the podcasting front, and I somehow there was a disconnection in the wiring. And I realized, man, all of these principles that I'm applying to the podcasting strategy that I teach in my coaching, that I teach to my clients, I'm not doing that in my own business right now. Where did that disconnect happen? But having the strategy in place allows me to hold myself accountable. I know where I started. I know where I want to be. and I was able to identify a gap. And that was incredibly important. And now I'm able to shift my focus. And that's something, a big part of what I'm doing right now is changing some things within my business in regards to the coaching, in regards to the offerings, in regards to the outreach and connection with potential customers and clients. There's a lot that I'm working on behind the scenes that will become public soon. But to go back to strategy, it's allowed me to look at where I was. I ask myself, am I going the direction I want to go? I was able to say for the most part, yes. However, there are some different things that I know I need to explore if I really want this to be the business that I'm standing behind and continuing to grow and scale. And that allowed me to change things up in that respect. So for all of that, stay tuned. But I tell you all of this to stress the importance of having that strategy in place. So let's shift that conversation to podcasting and why this is so important for your business. The true authentic definition of a podcasting strategy is, how can this medium work for you? That is as simple and basic as I can make it, because every business is different. Even if you're selling similar products, similar services, you have your own unique way of doing it. Also, you have your own unique way of connecting with your audience. This is where podcasting can come into play, because it's not just about having the podcast. And I know there are a lot of companies out there that will pitch that as the foundation. Have a podcast and you're going to get to do all of these great things. You're going to make all of these great connections. That's all well and good in theory, but you have to think about, how is it going to impact you specifically? Where are the gaps in your business right now? Where are you missing out? And then how can podcasting fill in those gaps? That's how you develop the strategy. It's not about starting the podcast to see how it impacts the business. It's building a podcast that will impact the right parts of your business. And like I said, everybody's different. So you may have a lot of your key marketing materials locked down, and you have a pretty efficient system on how to roll that out to your audience. That's great. But maybe your network is lacking. Maybe you want to make more connections with key players in your industry. That's where a podcast can come into play and serve that need. It would fill in that gap effectively, whether you start your own show and you start bringing on people to speak to, or you start a guesting campaign and you find established podcasts that are in your industry, in your niche, and you start making connections and putting your skills and your expertise center stage on those shows. Then there's a strategy behind that. But my point here is that you're not spinning your wheels trying to do podcasting one specific way when it really doesn't serve the needs that you have. Here's a big example that I like to bring up. So let's say that you work within a big company where you have multiple employees, and maybe those employees are spread across the country, maybe even the globe. Maybe you're an international company and you're looking for a way to build something that's more cohesive in regards to communication. Maybe you've been doing a company newsletter, or you do company calls, and it really doesn't unite the team and mobilize the troops the way you want to. If I were to come to you and say, well, you should start a podcast, you might look at me and say, what? Wait, why? Because that is such a blank statement from me. And I would completely understand why you might say, well, how does that make sense for me? But if I were to come to you and say, tell me right now how you are strengthening internal communication within your company. Now you can lay out what you're doing. And again, this could be different for everybody. So I'm not going to try to list all of the things that you could or couldn't be doing. However, as you tell me what you're looking to do, I might be able to say, listen, have you ever thought about it on this level? Perhaps an internal company podcast that's built specifically for your employees and for your company, not for your customers, but for anybody that's within the organizational circle. This gives you an opportunity to connect with people all over the globe, no matter where they're located, no matter where your offices are located. You can connect them to the C-suite. They are now on top of the innovations that are happening within your industry, changes that are happening within your company, milestones that people are achieving and accomplishing within your company. If you use podcasting that way, you've now created a system to where you can communicate with your entire company on a global level and they all hear the same message. Now, that is way more impactful than saying you should just start a podcast. As you start to develop that strategy, you can dig into what you need to do to strengthen the internal communication within your company. From there, maybe that takes off so well, you decide, hey, podcasting's worked so well for me within the company. Maybe I need to look outside and start talking to my customers and letting them know about what's going on. So it can spin off in a number of different ways, but I firmly believe that when you develop a strategy that allows you to use podcasting right for your brand, not only is it going to achieve the goals that you put in place for that, but it's going to get you excited about using this medium. And that's one of those underlying factors that doesn't get enough press. We're not talking enough about what happens on this microphone and why that's important. Why do you need to develop a good skill set for doing this? Well, because it allows you to communicate strongly through the microphone as you create content, but you also develop a skill set that can be transferred to other things. But in doing all that, the better you get at this and the more impact you start to have, the more you start to trust the medium. And you realize that podcasting really is a tool that can help you get to where you want to be. But if you just go at it blindly and say, let's throw out a few episodes and see what happens, and if the world shows up to listen, we'll know we're onto something. But if they don't, we'll just cut it off and say that it was a waste of time and we at least tried. And that's a very short-sighted way of looking at it because, for one, what does that even mean? Right? Like the world showing up is a very cliched type of goal. It's incredibly arbitrary, but you're probably existing in a niche to where you don't need the world's biggest audience. I know that's where I am. I'm never going to have numbers like a Joe Rogan or a Mel Robbins. I'm speaking to the businesses that are looking to grow something very special within their business, but they're using podcasting to do it. That's not a global audience. But I'm looking for the people that want to know how to do this right. That way I can coach them on how to build a strategy that makes it happen. So I don't need millions and millions of people to join me every week. I got you. You're here listening. You're here watching. That's what matters to me. And that's what should matter to you. Don't get wrapped up in metrics. You want to talk about something else I've covered ad nauseum here on the podcast? Go back and listen to my episodes about download metrics because those will F with your mind. And they will make you think way differently about this medium than you need to. A lot of the gurus will tell you how important the download metrics are. And I'm not saying that they don't play a role and they don't serve a purpose, but depending on what you're trying to build, they're not as important as everybody is stressing. Here's a perfect example to illustrate that. If you're trying to make a strong connection with the right people, and you are looking to scale and grow your business because of it, say you want to grow your client base, what would happen if you were to connect with 1 million people tomorrow? By law of averages, that's going to bring a major influx of demand and visibility into your business. And let's say of all of that visibility and these new people that have found you and they discovered you, let's say a certain percentage of them now wants to do business with you. Are you set to scale that fast? Can you support growth that quickly? If you can, great. But I'm willing to, I can say for myself personally, if I were to get 100 new customers tomorrow because I had 1 million people listen to this specific episode, I would be scrambling to find the best way to accommodate and serve those customers to the best of my skills. If I'm bringing people into my ecosystem, I want to make sure that they have the best experience possible. And as I grow and scale my business, I'm trying to do it methodically. I'm trying to do it strategically. I'm not trying to do it overnight because I know I can't support that quickly. And now I'm going to have some pissed off people out there. And what happens then? Well, now they're spreading the word about how bad it was. And now he's full of shit and everything he said didn't come to fruition. You don't want that for your business, right? So getting 1 million downloads overnight isn't going to serve you if you can't scale that fast. However, let's flip the script on this. Let's say your ideal motives are to build a podcast to where you can sell advertising on the traditional CPM or cost per 1,000 downloads model. That's an old radio model that was applied to podcasting. It's still in effect. And if you're looking to sell ads on your podcast, you can build better packages based on how many downloads you get. So in that respect, if that's your primary motive, then accumulating downloads and building your audience is the way to put things in the spotlight. That is what you want to push forward. That way, the faster you build the audience and you get more people listening, the better your ad packages are and you get more returns. So let's just say you work out an agreement with a company and they're going to pay you $25 for every 1,000 downloads. Well, now your motivation is to get more downloads, and the more listeners you get, the more they come in, and that's going to pay you more. So that's where download numbers are important. But I will tell you, that doesn't just happen overnight either. You have to be strategic in how you build out your content, how you position your content, how much content you put out. You might want to do more than one episode a week if you truly want to build that audience. You're going to have to look at ads. You're going to have to look at putting your podcast in front of the right eyes in the right places. So that's not just snapping the fingers either. There's a lot that goes into that to get you to a point to where you have thousands and thousands of downloads. Thus, you're able to capitalize on a CPM model. What I love about what I've built with my strategy services at Bombtrack Media, and believe me, this is not in no way, shape, or form meant to brag, but I've reverse engineered the thinking. I don't believe that you can just throw a blanket, you should start a podcast over any business. I believe what the first thing we need to do is identify the gaps that you have in growing your business. Is marketing not working as effectively as you might like? Are you looking for more creative ways to build content? Do you simply not have enough time to create the content that you want? Podcasting can solve those puzzles. However, we have to figure out how. So instead of saying, well, you should start a podcast and it will solve X, Y, and Z, let's look at X, Y, and Z and see what the real problems are, because it may put a completely different spin on how you use podcasting. That's where an effective podcasting strategy can truly make the impact that you need. It's not about just starting a podcast to start a podcast. It's about evaluating where your business stands, identifying where you want to go, finding the gaps that need filled in, and then can we plug podcasting into those gaps in order to fill them? If the answer is yes, great. If it's not, well, let's look at some alternatives. And that's really where I'm at, because I don't feel that I would ever sell somebody podcasting that doesn't need it. I can give you a perfect example of this. I was in a networking group a couple years ago, and I sat down for a one-on-one meeting with somebody who told me they wanted to start a podcast, but their business and what they do was more visual. They do power washing. And I asked, well, how do you want podcasting to serve your needs in that respect? And he talked about how he wanted to talk about power washing. Now, when I think of power washing, what's going to make me pick up the phone and call a power washer if I need to power wash my patio? It's not hearing the steps that go behind power washing on a podcast. It's seeing a visual of those power washers at work. So show me how they're cleaning a sidewalk. Show me how they're cleaning a patio. SB Mowing, and I'm shifting gears slightly. This is another great, well-known account online. Look him up, SB Mowing. But he does these lawn cleanups for free for the content. And then he's paid that. I mean, it was a genius move, but you can see it. And now, not only does he get paid through the content, if you want him to come do your work, you're seeing it in action. And that was the first thing I thought of when I laid this idea out, was creating content that shows the power washers at work. Because that's something that's going to trigger me to say, ooh, that's cool. That's what I need. Now I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to call that guy. So in essence, I talked him out of doing a podcast and doing business with me. And that to me is doing a service to you. Because doing a podcast when it won't impact your business is a waste of time and a waste of money. I want to work with the right people, but I want to find the right way to do it. And trying to shoehorn a podcast into things when it really doesn't belong is no way to do that. So to put a bow on all of this today, the authentic definition of a podcasting strategy is identifying the gaps within your existing practices and determining how podcasting can help fill those gaps. Now, if you want to start a podcast just to start a podcast on the hobbyist level, that's because you have a passion for whatever you're going to talk about. That, at least that's how I would see it. You love bourbon, you love football, you want to talk about these things more frequently. Well, a podcast is a great way to do it. But I'm talking specifically to you as a coach, a consultant, a business owner, an entrepreneur, somebody that wants to take their business to the next level and elevate their message and make it more visible to the target audience. Can podcasting play a role in that? Probably, but we need to determine how. Are you using podcasting now, but it's really not getting you to where you want to go? Okay, well, let's look at what you've done so far and make pivots, make changes, make some tweaks. You never know. You might be one small course change away from getting to exactly where you want to be. And sometimes finding that requires a second set of eyes. That's what I provide as a strategy coach for you. So, what do you do now? What's the next step? If you've listened to past episodes of this podcast, you've heard me offer a free discovery call. As of today, I am changing that up. I am now offering a free strategy call. Now, you might say, well, that's just semantics, but at the same time, it's not, because I'm changing what we're going to talk about within those 45-minute calls as well. When you come to this call, you will have identified some of these gaps already. So we're going to dive in and we're going to take a look at some things and ultimately get you pointed in the direction that makes the most sense for you. You are going to walk away from this call with much more clarity on what you're doing. And if it makes sense for us to work together from there, we're going to talk about what that looks like. If you get the answers that you want on this free strategy call, great. My goal is to make sure you get the most from your efforts. And I want to help you look at this differently. It's not just about starting a podcast. It's not about just continuing to consistently put out content and giving value to your audience so things fall into place eventually. It's looking at where you're at now and what's going to get you to the goal line as fast as possible. Podcasting can help you get there, but you have to understand how to do it right. So one last time for everybody in the back, what is the true, authentic definition of podcasting strategy? It's understanding where your business stands today, where are the gaps, and how can podcasting fill those gaps? Now you can build a podcasting strategy that helps you get to the goal line much more efficiently versus trying to start a podcast and continuously just building aimless content and hoping that things fall into place. We're going to do this right. And the first step for you to make this happen is to set up that free strategy call with me at jasonsircone.com/strategy call. That's jasonsircone.com/strategy call. The link is in the show notes, and I look forward to helping you identify those gaps, fill them in, and use your podcasting strategy effectively. And with that, I'm going to bring down the curtain on episode 102 of Podcasting Strategy Simplified. I hope you had a great time. I know I did. Until our paths cross again on the next episode, my name is Jason Sircone, reminding you that podcasting isn't easy, but it doesn't need to be complicated. I'll see you next time.